With Dragon Ball Super episode 95 in the books, Frieza is as ruthless as ever. So much so to the point where he's even intimidating gods. But to dive deeper into this breakdown, alrighty guys, it is Quaman here today, also known as Detective Q, and let's break down episode 95. So, starting off with the good, the number one thing we could talk about in this episode was Frieza being ruthless. I mean, not only was Frieza ruthless, but he was using techniques such as homing death beams and literally just impaling all of the assassins as they had nowhere to run, as the death beams were literally chasing them. We also see scenes where Frieza is literally poking these assassins into dust, and you're watching their entire bodies exploding as this is happening. And the most crazy ruthless part of this episode would have to be the fact that when Frieza was trying to figure out why the assassins came to obviously try to assassinate him, he wanted to figure out where they were coming from, and in this process of interrogation, he was literally turning them into Swiss cheese as he's just blasting them. And you can see the terrified look on Baba's face as she's watching the carnage of seeing these assassins being ripped to pieces. You're seeing Frieza laughing with such a sadistic smile on his face as he is seeing joy in his eyes, tearing these people to pieces. Like, it's just insane, guys. And speaking about assassins, guys, the dog-like assassin who shot the energy of destruction at Frieza and tried to take him out, it was crazy seeing how he was so terrified after Frieza managed to control the energy of destruction and literally just shoots him right through the chest without caring. Like, he literally just executes this guy with no question about it. And this was kind of going to what we saw in the previous episode where he shot him right in the shoulder. So Frieza really doesn't care. Also, another thing that I felt really added character to Frieza is how when he got the chance, he tried to actually bribe Universe 9 by saying he wanted to fight for their team. And this is really interesting because it really shows you that Frieza's not in this like everybody else. Like, everybody's in this to protect the universe, but Frieza's dead. He doesn't really get that much out of anything except for coming back to life and getting his own, obviously, empire or whatever he wants back on par. So I really enjoyed Frieza trying to manipulate the gods of destruction and the Supreme Kai in this episode itself. Also, it was cool seeing how both Sidra and Rou, who are the God of Destruction and the Supreme Kai of Universe 9, were kind of arguing about Frieza, where you see Sidra wanting Frieza on his team because he thinks the psychotic, evil, sadistic guy would be perfect for the Tournament of Power, but then Rou was pretty much saying, no, we can't trust this guy. I mean, this guy is so psycho, he doesn't even care about his universe being wiped out. And seeing that conflict really makes you wonder, like, is Frieza really the perfect guy? In ways he kind of is, but in other ways he's way too risky, and I kind of like that they added that element through the dialogue of the Supreme Kai and the God of Destruction. And last but not least, guys, I can't talk about this episode without mentioning how awesome the animation was in this episode. I mean, the animation in this episode was light years above Resurrection F. Even if you're not an expert on animation, the one image where you see Goku and Frieza literally punching each other, just seeing the impact of their punches, the water in the atmosphere. But let me know what you think about this animation compared to other ones. But guys, to have a fair breakdown, we gotta talk about the bad elements, and I feel like the energy of destruction was by far the weakest part of the episode, as it was a very weak plot device. Reason being is it soaked up a valuable amount of time and crushed the momentum of Frieza and Goku wiping out all of the assassins, and it significantly slowed down the pacing. It was also a cheap way to make weak enemies gain enough power to fight against a much stronger foe in both Frieza and Goku, as we would see later on, that Goku was trapped in this energy of destruction as well, and there was way too much time that was being occupied with Goku being trapped inside the energy of destruction while Frieza's talking to the gods of destruction. I think it would have been much better for Frieza to just knock Goku out while he was caught off guard, because it would have been much better and it would have had a lot more tension for Frieza to knock Goku out instead of just having Goku struggling in a ball of energy just sitting there the whole time. And not to mention, guys, the number one problem with this whole energy of destruction sequence was the fact that ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, Beerus just came out of nowhere and just literally blew it away. So it's like, so this really powerful energy of destruction that was giving Goku problems, Beerus just comes and blows it away. So it's like, so if he had come earlier, this would have all been a waste of time, and I felt it was cheap as a whole. Also, guys, another issue I had with this episode is Frieza claiming that he's mastered his golden form by going through mental training in the afterlife. And I understand in the Dragon Ball world that obviously meditating and using mental training can help you prepare for battles. But to me, for an actual transformation, it doesn't make sense for Frieza to have actually mastered that completely by just using mental training. For Piccolo, it makes more sense because obviously he's meditating and he doesn't really have a form, but to actually practice the energy manipulation and actual control of a form requires a lot of practice, and to do this with mental training alone seems completely weak and a sick excuse to make Frieza just get stronger for the Tournament of Power. And last but not least, guys, a problem I had with this episode was the Goku Frieza fight. Now, from an animation point of view, it was great. I had no problem with it in terms of how it looked. But in terms of the grand scheme of the episode, it really didn't accomplish anything, because do you really honestly think that if Goku had defeated Frieza in that quick skirmish that Frieza was gonna somehow listen to Goku when they came to the Tournament of Power? Like, Goku just literally saw this guy a few moments ago trap him with the energy of destruction, and now he can think that Frieza can be trusted if he somehow beats him in this skirmish? Like, really, like, that felt like a pointless fight. It looked cool, but it was pointless. But to move on to our discussion points, guys, as it was brought up by Rou in this episode, he was saying to Sidra that he felt that Frieza would be a better god of destruction than him, and it actually made me wonder, how good do you think Frieza would be as a god of destruction? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section below. This is a very open-ended question, and personally, as a god of destruction, I think Frieza would be terrible for the universe, because obviously his personality and his own gains would obviously be his main priority in being a god of destruction, and he would use that position to manipulate the universe to his own liking. But at the same time, though, he would be a wicked god of destruction, so he would be terrible for the universe, but he would be great for his own gains, assuming nobody else took him out because he was so bad. But let me hear your thoughts. To talk about our preview in this episode, it was cool to see Jiren in the Dragon Ball Super episode 96 preview, as we saw him literally just standing off by the side, and as we've been seeing with the intro and everything else, they've been promoting Jiren for a while. Everybody's been talking about his power, and Whis was mentioning how there's a mortal whose power even surpasses the gods, and a lot of people have been speculating that that's Jiren. So I definitely think that adding Jiren to this tournament is going to create a great balance, because you're going to have Frieza and Frost, who I'll talk about in a second, on one side, and then having Jiren and the Pride Troopers to kind of have a contrast of good versus evil. Now, to talk about Frieza versus Frost, we saw them in the episode preview literally talking to each other, so they're clearly aware and self-aware that they're literally alternate universe versions of themselves, and I think this is going to be interesting because it's going to add a lot of tension towards the other fighters in the tournament, seeing Frieza and his universe counterpart teaming up with Frost to literally try and dominate this Tournament of Power thing, and I think that is definitely something that is going to create a rift in this tournament for the better. And last but not least, guys, we see a Yardrat looking character joining in this Tournament of Power, and the weird thing about this is that the design was slightly off, because if you compare it with the original Yardrats, there's no whisker like the original Yardrats had in Dragon Ball Z, but it is weird to see the Yardrat with the exact same clothing coming back to this Tournament of Power, and a lot of people are speculating that Frieza's gonna leave and this guy is actually going to replace Frieza in it. But overall, guys, I would have to say that this episode was a solid 4 stars. It sounds shocking considering that this was one of the most violent and action-packed episodes we've seen in a while, and Frieza being in the episode made it very entertaining to see how much of a scheme he has for himself, but all of the poor plot devices and pacing in the episode just really brought it away from a 5, and I feel like the episode started off very, very, very strong, but then when the energy of destruction came later on and Goku and Frieza having that pointless fight, I feel like the episode just fell down to a 4. But overall, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below about episode 95 of Dragon Ball Super and your expectations for episode 96 of Dragon Ball Super. So with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and with better time management, this episode could have easily been a 5-star episode.